New playoff expansion rumors could be a game changer for everybody in the SEC, including, yes, the Vanderbilt Commodores.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy snow day here in Nashville. Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. So in today's episode, as you're snowed in and hopefully listening in Nashville somewhere, we're going to look at how Vandy baseball has collected 4 wins in 5 days in 2 vastly different time zones. It's impressive, really. And Vandy basketball is back in action at Rupp Arena. Can they do it? Can they get that signature road win? We'll see. But most importantly, the SEC and Big Ten are proposing something that could be a game changer for everyone in the respective conferences, including, yes, the Vanderbilt Commodores. That's right. So here's kind of what the proposal lays out, and I'll tell you how it benefits Vandy here in just a second. All right. So here's what they're looking at, and Pavia's doing a little dance. He's excited about it because he made a statement. Do you want to win championships? You want to have a chance to win championships? Hey, come to Vandy. This is what he's talking about, right? He must be on the committee. I don't know. But the committee wants to expand it to either 14 or 16 teams. Let's be honest. They probably want to get it to 16. The SEC and Big Ten would each get 4 automatic bids. That's part of it. The SEC will likely move to 9 conference games. There'll be no SEC title game. They will likely have play-in games for the last 2 automatic bids. So that brings 6 teams into play, 4 that will be in play-in games, and 2, obviously, that will get those top 2 spots. So the way teams play games, that'll be different. And then, of course, the SEC and Big Ten have agreed to play a game every single year. So it'll be the SEC Big Ten Challenge every single season. So you're going to get that Vanderbilt versus Rutgers matchup that you've all been waiting for. Vanderbilt versus Iowa, Vanderbilt versus Ohio State, Vanderbilt versus Wisconsin. Any matchup you can dream of, they're going to get it from the Big Ten at some point throughout the course of the next, 16 seasons. They will play the entire Big Ten. So this is exciting, okay? This is exciting for the fans. This is exciting for the conference because, honestly, you get meaningful football throughout the season. I mean, just think about this, okay? Even if it seems like Vanderbilt is out, okay, even if Vanderbilt's having a tough season and they're not really in the contention to finish in one of the top 6 spots, which gets you a chance to be in the college football playoff, if they're sitting at, say, 12, 13, 14, well, here's the thing with that. They have a chance to play spoiler. Like, every game's a playoff game here because the seeding can change week to week. You play these meaningful games, and things change rapidly, and things change on a dime. Just think of you got a week 10 matchup, Vandy versus, let's say, all right, let's look at Vandy's schedule here for a second. Okay. Let's pretend that that Utah State is, we'll say, Mississippi State. Okay. So let's say they're playing Auburn. Okay. Let's say they're at that week here. It's November 8th. They're playing Auburn. Auburn is sitting there in the 6th spot. They win this game. They pretty much lock up this 6th spot. Okay. Now let's say Vandy goes out and beats them, knocks them out of that top spot. That's a meaningful game for Vandy because they have something to play for. They have that chance to knock a team out of the playoff race. That's kind of their playoffs if the season has gone awry. Okay. And so every game is meaningful. You have to, there's no okay, well, I think the prevailing thought is, okay, well, they're going to have 6 teams for 4 spots. that are going to be playing into it, and so you're going to get games that, like, let's say they're not going to focus on like this big road game because, hey, if they lose 1 or 2 games, it's not going to matter. But if you go to 9 conference games, and that's going to really change it because, hey, you can't mess around now and get your wins and get in the playoffs. You have to win those conference games because those conference standings mean something. There's no conference title anymore. There's just that regular season deal where you finish as the top seed, you get that auto bid, and likely, I think they're still thinking buys, but I don't like the idea of buys, just so you know. But you honestly get some really good matchups. You're going to get some really good focused football like you did. I think you're going to get the same level that you would get during the BCS era, where you had to win every game and you had to win impressively because it matters that much, because seeding can change so much. Like, you can have a team catch fire second half of the season and really launch themselves into that 6th spot if they rattle off a few wins. Like, Vandy could have got themselves in contention. Like, just think, Vandy would have been at one point in the season after they had beat Auburn. They were sitting at 5-2 through 7 games. They would have been sitting in one of those spots. Like, they're playing for something now down the stretch. Now, they would have kind of dropped. They would have obviously dropped out of that, losing those last 3 in a row. But, like, maybe that changes how they play. Like, maybe, I don't think Vandy ever thought they were going to be in the SEC championship, and so they were out of that playoff contention. But let's say, like, now you're playing for that 6th spot. That 6th spot's a very important spot now because that is now become a play-in game if everything kind of goes the way I think it could go. And so here's kind of another look at some of the things that would impact this expansion. Now, you would get 2 ACC bids, 2 Big 12 bids, and I think like 3 or 4 at-large bids. 1 for the Group of 5, 1 for Notre Dame if they qualify, and of course the 2 highest-rated teams outside of that. So, just think if you're in that 7th spot. If you could be in that 7th spot and somehow find yourself in the rankings, like, the SEC is very strong year in and year out. So just think if one year they have 7 teams in the top 16, like, you're going to get probably, you're going to get a bunch of teams in. So it's going to be kind of one of those scenarios where, okay, well, we're looking at it and you could see like Kentucky sitting there in that 5th spot looking for a play-in game, or like Vandy one year, like maybe Vandy next year or this coming season. It's not going to matter because there's not that format for this season. But like, just think if like you're sitting there at 5-2 last season, you just beaten Alabama, you just went on the road and beat Kentucky and Auburn. You're sitting at 5-2 through 7. Just think of like if it was that format and you had the rest of the season ahead of you, just think about how different the field would have been. Just think about the level of football that would have been played. Just think of what would have happened possibly. Like, you could have possibly had Vanderbilt in a play-in game for the college football playoff coming off a 2-10 season. You want to talk about a turnaround. Holy cow. And in the NIL era, like, that's how you can get some players. Like, not only NIL, not only paying, but like some of these teams that don't have as big of a budget, like, you can say, hey, listen, we can't pay as much as, we can't pay as much as Ohio State. We can't pay as much as Georgia. We can't pay as much as Bama, whatever, or Texas. All right. But you're going to go there. You're going to come here. You're still going to compete for that national stage, that playoff spot. And, there's more teams in. Like, you're going to be able, I think there's going to be more recruits, more transfers with the 105. The way rosters are shifting, I think it's going to build more parity. And with more parity comes excitement. And the ratings are going to be through the roof. Like, you're going to have competitive football all season long. And the Big Ten SEC is for bragging rights. That game's going to be fire. That probably it's all going to be probably at opening weekend. So if they're doing it and they're going to do it right, they're going to put all those games on opening weekend. So you could get like a Ole Miss Penn State marquee matchup. You could get a Georgia Ohio State to kick off the season. I don't know what they would do with the other games. I would love for Vandy to play Minnesota or Vandy Northwestern or whatever. I don't care the matchup, but it's SEC versus Big Ten. It is a meaningful game, impactful game on the season, it's a great tone setter. It's great for bragging rights. And then, of course, like I've said, you get marquee matchups, you get, for the fans, you get meaningful football all throughout the season. I think this does wonders for the integrity of the season. Like, I think it really truly makes every game mean something, because you could play into one of those 6 spots and those things can shift up and down rapidly, or you could get 6 teams that are just far and away better than the rest of the conference. And you're going to get that every once in a while, where it's like a clear separation from 6 to 7. And that's going to happen occasionally. But I think with the roster movements and the NIL stuff, I think you're getting more of the former, where it's, these top teams, and it's just like all 16 in the SEC can really do some damage. Like, just think, Mississippi State has a chance to spoil Ole Miss this season, and they're sitting at like 1-11. You think they're gonna play hard? Like, normally they would have thrown in the towel and Ole Miss would just roll over them in the Egg Bowl. You think that's gonna happen? Like, you think they're gonna play hard then? Heck yeah, right? Just, can you imagine? Right? Can you imagine Tennessee sitting there in the 5th spot, and if they lose, they're out of the play-in, and they got 1 game left against Vandy at home. You think Vandy's going to be up for that one? Just imagine if, like, Tennessee was 6, Vandy was 7, and they were playing to flip-flop those spots. Like, you think that would be you think that rivalry game would be intense? Absolutely, it would be. So I'm all for it, man. I think this is good for the fans. I think this could be good for the conferences and the level of play in the conferences. I think this is good for the conferences to finally mandate that they play each other. So you're going to get tougher games, tougher schedules. It eliminates a cupcake, which, if you're going to be the best, you got to play the best, and you got to play 9 conference games. It is what it is, right? And you got to play the best conferences. You got to play the Big Ten. And you'll truly see who's better top to bottom in a non-bowl meaningful situation. You'll truly see, okay, is the Big Ten better this year at this point, or is the SEC better this year at this point? So you're going to see a lot of great stuff. I'm all for it, and that's kind of a big fan. So before we roll to basketball, which we'll talk about, if Vandy Hoops can finally get that signature win, take a screenshot of that. 4 auto bids, 16 teams, 9 conference games, play-in games, possibly SEC Big Ten Challenge every season. Yes, sign me up. Now, talking about hoops next. Before we get to hoops, this message is from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. And you know what taxes were? They were dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms. And then you had to wait and wonder and worry if you were going to get any money back. Well, now Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get money back guaranteed, all while you go about your day. So there's no stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now, this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now. TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. Thank you to the everydayers for making this show what it is. All right, so make sure if you need a second listen, Locked On SEC is what you want to do. Check out Chris Gordy, does a great job. Locked On Ole Miss with Stephen Willis. He's one of the best on this network, so you should check him out. He does a really good job over there. So don't miss that. The most watched Ole Miss podcast for a reason. All right, so let's talk hoops. Can they get it done? Like really? Can they get it done? Here's what they got to do. Okay, they go to Rupp Arena, and this is, Kentucky's good. they're good. But like, here's the thing they have to overcome. Like, it doesn't matter how good or how bad. It could be James Lawson High School that they're playing against, and the daunting task of guarding Chandler Galloway. But it doesn't matter because they don't come out in the second half. They come out with a lack of focus. Something happens mentally to them in the second half of games. Jackson Robinson and Lamont Butler are they're injured. So it's going to be a matter of what their availability is like. It doesn't look like they're going to be back. And so they're kind of, Kentucky's kind of in a little bit of a skid. I wouldn't go straight to like major skid or anything kind of where you're worried about it. But this is going to be something to look at and to keep an eye on, because those two guys really kind of make it go. Okay. And they, Kentucky's limping in here after losing to Texas on Saturday. They're just decimated with injuries right now. Amari Williams, Ortega Alway, and Ainsley Allamore were the only double-digit scorers. They had to shoot the ball a lot, but it's a situation for Kentucky where they're not necessarily. Neither team's not necessarily in a must-win situation, but like, this is a game that if Vanderbilt kind of puts it all together, Rupp Arena really kind of uplifts Kentucky no matter how bad or how banged up they are. Just that environment, that arena, the history, but inside that arena, the banners, all that stuff. The ghost of Adolph Rupp, right? It's one of those things where they just play at a whole new level. And so it's going to be an interesting matchup, of course, just because of that alone. And so Vandy, the first key is this. If they come out hot in the first half, which I think they will, because Kentucky's beat up, they're lacking confidence. If they can come out in the first half and really kind of get a lead and just kind of build some good momentum, your number one focus now becomes gaining that focus or regaining that focus coming out of the locker room. I don't know what happens between going into halftime and coming back out of halftime for the second half. I don't know what happens between those two moments or in those moments of time, because the second half usually destroys. It usually destroys Vanderbilt. But man, if they can come out focused in the second half, it's going to be outstanding. They're going to get that signature win, and I don't care if Kentucky's beat up. This is a signature win because it is a ranked team on the road. Two things which they hadn't been able to accomplish. Okay, again, always play to your identity, get to the rim, and take threes as they come. Okay, so what that means is your identity is tough, gritty. Get to the rim. Get in transition as much as you can, get to the free throw line and take open looks at three when you get them. When you get some good run, when you get in a good rhythm, then you start knocking down some threes. Jason Edwards, I thought, did a great job of that against Tennessee, especially early on. But I think when the wheels fell off, nobody was doing anything really. So, and then when they tried to mount a comeback, it just became like, one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back, hit a three, give up a three, all that kind of thing. And then the third one is force Kentucky to turn the ball over and then capitalize when they do, because they're, like I said, they're beat up. They don't have a ton of depth. They don't have a ton of quality depth. They've got some guys hurt. They're lacking again. You have to capitalize on the fact that they're lacking a little bit of confidence. You have to take advantage of the fact that, hey, if they turn this ball over and they let you get one in transition, you got to get it. And if they foul you, you got to knock down the free throws. You have to play well on both ends of the floor. I think just like in the first matchup, you can do well in the paint if you can continue to out rebound them, if you can get points down low in the paint and at the rim. I think you have a legitimate shot of sweeping Kentucky and getting that signature road win, because your two signature wins right now in the Mark Byington era are home games. And like home venues in the SEC, home venues in college basketball in general are like, when they say home court advantage, like in the NBA, it doesn't really matter. Like you don't really, like, home court is just that you just don't have to travel. But in college basketball, home court arena is totally different. Your fans are much more vicious. The arena itself, just the nuances of these college arenas really do make a difference. And there's like a mystique to some of these historic venues, like Cameron Indoor. Like, it's tough to win in that venue, no matter how bad Duke is, just because of the mystique of the building, the Cameron crazies. Rupp Arena is the same way. You got, and they call it the Dean Dome. I don't know what it's actually called, but I refer to it as the Dean Dome. But like, you walk into places like Rupp or the Dean Dome, and you see like what seems like a million banners in the rafters. You're just sitting there in awe. Like, this venue is incredible, right? Same as like home field advantage in college football. Like, you walk into Bryant-Denny, you're just like in awe of the atmosphere. It's just overwhelming. And for road teams to try to manage that, it's a tough thing mentally. It is a truly an exercise in psychology. And Vanderbilt has not been able to pass those tests yet. Memorial Gym has the same effect on opponents, right? It's odd because the benches are on the baselines. The fans are insane, but they're like, it feels like a mile off the court. It seems like the court's a little bit raised, and it's a straight vertical building, and it's real noisy. You got those massive scoreboards on the pillars. Like, it's a totally different environment. There's some sort of mystique where, Vandy's not like a historically dominant program, but there's some like mystique in Memorial that just makes it a tough place to play as a visitor. And recently in the Bryce Drew and Stackhouse era, it was a tough venue to play in for the home team too. They struggled just as easily, but this is going to be an interesting game because Kentucky is beat up. They're still ranked. They're still good. So don't take this as, this is a cheap win. This is it's not necessarily a must win for Vandy, but to me, I think if you get this win, you all but lock up a spot in the NCAA tournament. So yeah, to me, it is kind of a must win. And if the basketball group is listening to this, there's no pressure whatsoever. You don't have to do anything. It's no pressure. Just go out and play your game, all that stuff. So I'm excited about this game because this could be like, hey, this could be the turning point for this Vandy basketball team. This could be like, hey, they win this game, shoot, they go on a run, and they get into the SEC tournament. Like, anything can happen in the SEC tournament, and then they get that bid to the NCAA tournament. And you want to talk about? They call it March Madness for a reason. Let me just put that out there. It's March Madness for a reason. So anyway, but that's basketball. Basketball at Rupp Arena. Get excited. This is a very winnable game for Vandy, and I do expect them to get this one, partly because of the injuries, but I think partly because they are this close. They're on the cusp of putting it all together and locking it down. So, baseball team, speaking of putting it together, they put together an impressive 5-day stretch, 2 different time zones, 4 wins, using every arm, including some of the students in the stands. Seem like some bats are happening. This seems like it is a different team because you get a lot of transfers, but it just seems like the approach is like a complete 180 from last year. I like it. We'll talk about it next. All right, wrapping up the show here. Locked on Vandy. Follow at Locked on Vandy on all social media platforms. Thank you for what you do. Thank you, everydayers. There's 616 of you. There's 616 of you. I think I said that right. That subscribe. You get the bell notifications. Leave comments. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, is this playoff expansion stuff, is that a game changer, right? Leave a comment. Like, what do you think about that? Like, does Vandy actually have a chance in that scenario? Like, can they reach into that 6th spot with all the changes? And we'll probably lean on that a little bit more. All right. Vandy hoops. Like, can they take the next step? Are they going to get over this whatever second half crap they're dealing with? Can they get it done at Rupp? And then the baseball team. What are your thoughts on baseball so far? Is it kind of, do we need to pump the brakes? Is it exciting? All the above. I mean, even though I'm always kind of skeptical when it comes to baseball, because baseball is just the nature of baseball is that, like, you could go on win 4 out of 5 and then turn around and lose 5 in a row. Like, it's a very streaky sport because baseball is just tough like that. But here's my takeaways from the last 5 days, because Vandy baseball is going to get a weather break here because snow, right? But here's my takeaways. Okay, here's 3 of my takes actually. This team finds a way to get it done, man. The most impressive part is this. They play a tough 3-game set in this Desert Invitational. It's not really a tournament. It kind of sounds like a tournament, but it wasn't really a tournament. But they played 3 tough games against 3 tough opponents who I think will all be in regional, super regional, and possibly Omaha, right? I think Nebraska could sneak their way into Omaha somehow. But they find a way to get it done. And then they come home, and within a span of 18 hours from the last pitch in Phoenix to first pitch in Nashville, they had to take on Air Force. And Air Force was exhausted too. That game, like, these 2 games were just exhausted messes, right? So I think taking anything from these 2 games against Air Force solely is not 100% accurate. But I will say this. This team finds a way. This team has found a way to get it done. They've been exhausted. Especially these last 2 games were an exhausting experience. It's cold, so that takes it out of you. And plenty of opportunities to lose focus. But they find a way to get it done. They're tied with Air Force late in the game. They go on a little bit of a rally. They hit the ball around, and they put some runs across the plate. They win 5-2 in the last one. So they've just been finding ways to get it done. Pitching has been great. Lots of guys getting work. I think you're getting some quality outings from the starters. And Tim Corbin's philosophy is to ease those guys in, because you don't want to and I get it. And from a fan's perspective, shoot, I want to see Cody Bowker. I want to see him go 7 1/3, striking out 10 guys, right? You want to see that as a fan, but you understand also that, like, I would rather see Cody Bowker in the SEC tournament in Hoover going 7 1/3 and striking out 10 versus going 7 1/3 against Grand Canyon, right? You want to, or against UC Irvine, I think is who he pitched against. But you want to see, of course, you want to see your starters go deep into games, and trust me, there'll be plenty of opportunities for that to happen the more you get into conference play. But I think early in the season and with some of these midweek games, it's about getting your young arms, your bullpen arms. It's about getting them some quality work, because shoot, there's going to be a mid-April series against Kentucky that it's just going to seem like the wheels are going to fall off your starter. Like, let's say JD Thompson comes in, and let's say he gets shelled, which, as a starting pitcher, if you don't get shelled, you probably haven't pitched enough innings. You're going to get shelled at some point. You'll get knocked around. Okay. And it's going to happen to everybody in every league, on every team at some point in the season. Oftentimes when you're least expecting it, like you waltz into a series against who you perceive as the bottom feeders of your conference. Next thing you know, your Friday starter is out after 1 2/3 innings and 7 earned runs. Like, you're trying to figure out, your head spinning, and now you're trying to figure out what to do. He just got destroyed in his outing. But this is a time to get your bullpen going, right? This is a time to get those guys, like, if you worked your bullpen early in the season, they have some confidence, and you have a couple of guys that, hey, we know there's a couple of guys that could possibly be fighting for starting spots. We could, like, that's how JD Thompson got into the Sunday role last year. He made some long relief starts, early in the early parts of the season, and he just kind of worked his way into the rotation, into the weekend rotation. Here we are. So that's just kind of one of the reasons you get your bullpen ready for these moments. if they're pitching well, it's going to happen. All right. And then the last take, RJ Austin, Jonathan Vastine, Riley Nelson, Rustin Rigdon, just to name a few. And at this moment, those are your stars. That's the core of your team. RJ Austin is he's one of the top 100 prospects in baseball. So is Jonathan Vastine. Riley Nelson really in his first D1 action, he's really making things interesting. Rustin Rigdon, he's just a freshman. He's playing himself into a really nice role with Vanderbilt and the Vandy boys. JD Rogers, I think, is making it increasingly tough to take him out of the lineup as well. And then your pitching, of course, is your starting pitching outside of McIlvain, Ethan McIlvain, who it just needs more work. Honestly, he's struggling, but he just needs more work. He needs more innings. He needs to pitch more, and he'll, we'll know by the time we get really into conference play whether he is for real or do we need to look at replacing him in the rotation. So, but anyway, those are my takeaways as of right now through the first 5. Now you get a little bit of a weather break, which these games should have been happening Wednesday and Thursday. But you get a little bit of a weather break now and get a little time to kind of rest a little bit. So exciting times for Vanderbilt athletics. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Hopefully if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that like button, hit that subscribe if you haven't already. Tell a friend, bring a friend next time and say, hey, you need to listen to Locked On Vandy. It is the place to be. All right. Anyway, well, that's all I got. See you back here next time. Enjoy the snow. And we'll see you back here when I see you again. Anchor down. Goodbye.